Off Gibraltar by Alfred H. Miles. It is not to be supposed that our enemies quietly accepted the conquest of Gibraltar by Sir George Rooke as final. Indeed, a very short time elapsed before they began to make efforts to regain it. The Spaniards, who were the best judges, found our possession of the great fortress so great a thorn in their sides that they prevailed upon the French to hazard an engagement at sea to facilitate their retaking it, and afterwards obtained a squadron of French ships under the command of Monsieur de Pointes to assist them in carrying on a siege. The Prince of Hesse, having sent early advice of this to Lisbon, Sir John Leake, in the beginning of the month of October, 1704, proceeded with his squadron to the relief of the garrison, and actually landed several gunners, carpenters, and engineers, with a body of 400 marines. But receiving intelligence that the French were approaching with a force much superior to his own, he found it necessary to return to Lisbon. He did this with a view only to refit, and to be in a better condition to supply and assist the garrison in a second expedition, for which he had very prudently directed preparations to be made in his absence. This enabled him to put to sea again on October 25th, and on the 29th he entered the Bay of Gibraltar at a very critical juncture. For that very night, the enemy intended to storm the town on all sides, and had procured 200 boats from Cadiz in order to land 3,000 men near the New Mole. Sir John Leake entered so suddenly that he surprised 2 frigates in the bay, one of 42 and the other of 24 guns, a brigantine of 14, a fireship of 16, a storeship full of bombs, and 2 English prizes, while a tartan and a frigate of 30 guns, which had just left the bay, were taken by an English ship that followed him. The enemy, notwithstanding these discouragements, continued the siege in expectation of strong naval succors from France, and therefore Sir John Leake resolved to land as many men as he could spare to reinforce the garrison. This he performed on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of November, and continued still on the coast in order to alarm and distress the enemy. On the 19th he ordered his smallest frigates as near the shore as possible, and then manned his boats as if he intended a descent. This was done so slowly that the Spanish general had time to draw down a great body of cavalry, upon which the admiral put his design in execution, and saluted them in such a manner with his great and small arms that they scampered back to their camp with great precipitation. The Centurion arrived on November 22nd, and brought in with her a French prize from Martinico, very richly laden, and, at the same time, gave the admiral intelligence that he had discovered a very strong squadron in the Bay of Cadiz, which he apprehended would soon be in a condition to sail. Upon this, Sir John Leake resolved to put to sea, and to stand with his fleet to the eastward of Gibraltar, that he might be the better able to take such measures as should be found necessary, as well for the preservation of the place as for securing the succors that were expected from Lisbon. On December 7th, the Antelope arrived with 9 transports under her convoy, and 2 days afterwards the Newcastle with 7 more, having on board nearly 2,000 land troops. These escaped the French fleet very luckily, for when they were off Cape Spartel, they had sight of Monsieur Pointes's squadron, consisting of 24 sail of men-of-war sailing under English and Dutch colors. As they expected to meet the Confederate fleet under Sir John Leake and Rear Admiral Vanderdussen thereabouts, they were readily deceived, and did their utmost to join their enemies. Being becalmed, they put their boats to sea on both sides to tow the ships, but observing that the men-of-war stretched themselves, and endeavored to make a half-moon to surround them, they made a private signal which Sir John Leake would have understood. This betrayed the French, who, finding themselves discovered, put up their colors and endeavored to fall upon the transports, which, however, escaped by means of their oars, and night coming on got away by favor of a small breeze from the southwest. By the arrival of these succors, the garrison of Gibraltar was increased to upwards of 3,000 men, and having already obtained many advantages over the enemy, it was no longer thought requisite to keep the fleet, which by long service was now but in an indifferent condition, either in the bay or on the coast, whereupon it was unanimously resolved to sail with all convenient speed to Lisbon in order to refit, and to provide further supplies for the garrison, in case, as the Spaniards gave out, they should receive such reinforcements from King Louis and King Philip as would enable them to renew the siege both by land and sea. This resolution was as speedily executed as wisely taken, and the fleet arrived at Lisbon in the latter end of 1704. 4 years later, fortune favored Sir John Leake in these waters once again. Upon receiving advice from Colonel Elliot, governor of Gibraltar, in Ypres, that some French ships of war were seen cruising off the strait's mouth, the admiral sailed from the river of Lisbon on the 28th, and in his passage up the straits on May 11th, when about 12 leagues from Alicante, sighted several vessels which he took to be fishing boats. Sir John had previously detached some light frigates to give notice of the approach of his fleet, and one of them had had the good luck to take a French frigate of 24 guns, from which he obtained an account of a convoy that was expected. Upon this, the captains of our frigates made the necessary dispositions for intercepting it. The next day the French convoy appeared in sight, consisting of 3 men of war, one of 44, another of 40, and the third of 32 guns, with 90 settees and tartines laden with wheat, barley, and oil for the use of the Duke of Orleans' army, and bound for Pensacola, near the mouth of the Ebro. The British frigates bore down immediately upon the enemy's men of war, who, however, abandoning their barks and endeavoring to make their escape, came in view of the main fleet, upon which Sir John Leake made signal to give chase. As our great ships could not follow them near the coast, the French made their escape in the night, but the vice-admiral of the White, perceiving the barks near the coast, sent his longboats and small ships in and took several of them. The next morning others were captured, and some barks of Catalonia, coming out of their harbors to secure a share in the booty, 69 of them were taken and the rest dispersed.